Hey there, Facebook. Welcome to the tall and the short of it today, no Betsy. Sorry, Betsy's on vacation. So you're just going to get me, Jenny, and my lovely guest,
Susan Elsworth, who's also short, so I'm picking it up for Betsy. I'm representing the short side of it today.
Absolutely. We love that. So I'm going to start by telling you guys today about our topic. I think it's a really important topic that doesn't get a lot of airtime or a lot of time for training in schools. So I think it's really important that we advocate for this, which is why I reached out to Susan. So we're going to be talking today about fetal alcohol syndrome disorder. Is that correct? How I
fetal
said that?
Alcohol spectrum disorders.
Spectrum disorders. Okay, so fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. And I'm going to have her tell you about herself and her organization and what her role is and the purpose of what she's doing here. And how do I say the acronym of your...
And NOFAS.
And NOFAS. Okay. So, like I said, I wasn't sure how to say it, so I'll let you tell us about NOFAS, what it stands for, what the purpose is, and what is your role in that organization.
Okay. And NOFAS is Indiana's affiliate of National Organization for Fetal Alcohol Syndrome, which is housed in Washington, D.C. And the purpose is to educate, advocate, and train on teratogens that can harm fetal development. It started off being purely fetal alcohol spectrum, prenatal alcohol exposure, but it's expanded to all teratogens. But that's
okay,
still
you're saying a word I don't know what that means. What's a teratogen? Did I even say that right?
Yeah, you did say that right.
Okay, tell us what that is.
So a teratogen is something harmful for a toxin, something that's going to compromise fetal development during gestation.
Okay, perfect.
So that's what its purpose is. And so we do a lot of training for parents. We do a lot of training for providers. We just came off doing six-hour trainings for FASD, where we trained caregivers, we trained educators, we trained providers, police officers, mental health providers on what is FASD and how it can manifest itself in a person who's experienced prenatal alcohol exposure.
Wow, you were busy.
I was busy.
For sure.
My role is I am the founder of a NOFAS. So I am also the executive director of a NOFAS now, and I am the chairperson or the president of the affiliate network for National Organization for Fetal Alcohol Syndrome right now.
Okay, so this is part of a larger national organization. Do they have, I guess that would be like a branch like you in all the states, or have they got that in all the states yet?
We have 32 affiliates international. Not every state has an affiliate because it's a nonprofit. Somebody would have to start it in every state and then be able to fund it. And as it is, there is no federal funding earmarked for FASD.
Sure.
So you have to come through state budgets or through grants to be able to fund your projects.
Right. Well, our followers, that's all and short of it, know all about funding because I've been talking about it for a while now.
Yes.
And how hard it is to lobby and advocate for that at the federal level as well as at our state level. So you are the founder of the one for Indiana.
Right.
So what led you to that point that you decided to do that? We want to hear about your personal story, okay? So look into the camera and tell them all about you.
Oh, well, when I was a little girl, I didn't dream of going up and starting a nonprofit. We were foster parents for the state of Indiana for 12 years. And during those 12 years, we adopted 9 children who had come through the child welfare system.
Okay, wow.
So that brings our total to 13 children. Everybody wants to put the little label on who's a who and how do they belong, etc. So we have a total of 13 children. 5 of those children had experienced prenatal alcohol exposure, and they were diagnosed with an FASD. And FASD is just like the autism. It's a spectrum term that defines several different diagnoses that are under that. And the most severe is fetal alcohol syndrome. And fetal alcohol syndrome is when you can see the facial features. So that's the most severe, and we see the facial features. And 4 of my kids have that diagnosis, and 1 has partial. which means that they have some of the facial features, but not all, but they still have all the behaviors.
Okay, so what are those facial features that we see in kids with fetal alcohol spectrum disorders?
When they talk, the facial features, they have a big word called phenotypes, and what they classic phenotypes are the small, looks like small inset eyes.
Okay.
And if you put your finger underneath your nose, those two ridges there, that's called the philtrum.
You're all doing it now, you darn.
So this is smooth for these kiddos.
Hi, Patty.
They're thin, their upper lip is thinner than normal, and those are the three classics. But on the face, we also see a wide spot between the top of the forehead and the top of the bridge of the nose, where that's tend to be flatter. We can have ear sets that are a little bit lower on the side of their face.
Okay.
And once in a while, we're going to see a nose that's turned up a little bit, and those are the classic features. But most of our kids are not FAS. If you're thinking of an iceberg, what you see in those facial features would be the top kiddos. Most of our kids are underneath the water, called ARND, which is alcohol-related neurodevelopmental disorder. And that means that they have the behaviors, but not the facial features. So these are the kids that when you see at school and in the classrooms look typical on the outside, but on the inside their brain has been changed. The structure of their brain and how their brain functions has been changed.
From being exposed to the alcohol.
From being exposed to alcohol. And this is permanent. So this will follow them their lifelong. Now, how that manifests itself changes at different developmental stages, but it won't go away.
Right. Hi, Leah. So continue on with your personal story. I know I interrupted you there with that, so continue on with your story.
So when our kiddos were diagnosed, then it becomes, okay, now what? Now what do we do with this? What does this mean for our family? And Indiana is a resource-poor state with a lot of things, but especially with FASD. So we were going to other states to be trained in what is it, what does it look like in our kids, what are the best interventions that we can put into place. So we were going to Ohio and New Jersey and talking to Minnesota and Wisconsin about how to get things set up for our kids to be set up for success.
Sure.
So
you had to be really resourceful to find all that, huh?
You had to be resourceful. And out of that, I became kind of an advocate, a family advocate, and was able to participate in some state level coalitions and committees for representing families. And it was suggested that we start a nonprofit so that we could start applying for grant money to get some funds into the state of Indiana so that we could do some training for FASD. Great. And that was really the birth. It was birthed around my kitchen table in 2014. And then in 2017, we became a subsidiary of Mental Health America of Indiana, housed down here in Indianapolis.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. So, hey, Jake. Hey, Jennifer, joining us. Look, there's Jennifer Kuhn. Okay, let me back up here because you said 5 of your kids have either the fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, the classic, 4 of those, and then the other one just has the things you can't see. So talk a little bit more about that piece. I'm going to kind of flip-flop these 2 questions that I had sent you ahead of time. What behaviors might a teacher see in the classroom? Because if you can't tell by their facial features, and you may not know their background. You'll get a kid in your classroom and you don't know if they were exposed to alcohol, and it's not something you just come out and ask a parent, right? Usually, unless they volunteer that information to you, you won't know. So, what behaviors might you see in the classroom when a child has more of that? I forget the acronym you used. You said it was
the phenotypes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, what might you see in the classroom?
Okay. Well, the first things that the teachers are probably going to notice is learning difficulties, challenges. So a lot of our kids can read. If you were to say, "Read me this book," they would be able to read. If you were to say, "What do you think is going to happen next?" Or be able to pull what's the moral of this story? Or they be able to read, but then they take the reading counts quiz and then they bomb every quiz because they can't hang on to anything past just doing the actual reading. It's probably going to be one of the first things that they're going to see with regard to academics when it comes to two-stage instructions, double-digit math, memorization. Memorization is really hard for our kids because their memory is impacted in two ways. Number one, when they learn something, they're not filing it in a logical place.
Okay.
So when they go back to look for what they filed, they can't find it.
Okay. So retrieval could be an issue.
So retrieval can be an issue. The second thing that is impacted with that memory piece is they have complications with short-term memory.
Oh, okay.
So here's what this looks like is on Monday, Johnny's sitting at his desk and he's doing math and 2 + 2 = 4 and he's able to comprehend that. He remembers it. Tuesday he goes in, teacher gives him a math paper and 2 + 2's on there and he stares at the paper. He has no idea. What am I doing with this? And she goes, we just did this yesterday. But for him, he doesn't remember and doesn't have that context to put that into.
Because some of it never moved from short-term to long-term memory, and the stuff that did maybe move to long-term memory, he can't find it.
Right. So we see this kind of thing with the memory piece, which is going to be kind of hard for them. I think what they're going to probably notice the most is complications with behavior.
Okay.
And so a lot of our kids have a lot of sensory integration issues, which means that they're going to go into a classroom and immediately just walk into the door, they're completely overwhelmed. Bright lights, stuff all over the walls, desks everywhere, no matter how neat the room is, it's still overwhelming for them. Now let's put in about 26 students who are shuffling their feet, tapping their desks, tapping their pencils.
Lots of stimulation.
They can't even begin to concentrate on this kind of thing. So they're overstimulated. They have difficulty in self-regulation.
Okay.
So what this is going to look like is they can't tell the difference between a mountain and a molehill.
Okay.
Everything is a mountain.
So there's no big, you have to teach them the difference between big deals and little deals.
Big deals and little deals.
Okay.
And they usually go from 0 to 60 in a nanosecond. So if they're happy, they're extremely happy. And if they're ticked off, hell hath no fury, like the kid who has FASD. So we see those kind of things. They have a huge disconnect between choices and consequences. And this is problematic for our kiddos, it's problematic for the teachers and the staff there, meaning that our systems are set up to be, here's the behavior that I want to see from you, and here's what's going to happen if you don't do it. So the first time there's a warning, and okay, this is a behavior, now I'm warning you, this is what I want to see you happen. So the student is going to do it again, and they're going to get this consequence.
Yes.
So then they're going to repeat this. And so our system is set up that every time they repeat it, we're going to increase the consequence in severity. And we're making the assumption that you should know by now.
Yes.
Because last time I told you not to do that, you lost your recess.
Yes.
Last time I told you to do that, you had it in school. These kids are not connecting those choices and those consequences.
Yeah.
And so that's problematic for them. It's problematic for the teachers and the relationships.
And I don't know if you know the stats or anything on this, and I don't expect you to pull them out of thin air, but from what I have looked at and researched, is that there are a lot of people in juvenile detention and in adult prisons that have fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, and a lot of times they were either coerced into doing something with a group but didn't understand how their action would have consequences, just not really getting that cause and effect piece, and then they're surprised when they're in trouble. So
I'm familiar with that.
And also I heard that it kind of goes hand in hand, the symptoms kind of overlap with a lot of other disorders like ADHD or like a learning disability, so it's hard to tell one from the other sometimes, and so people might mistake, especially if they don't have a lot of knowledge about FASD, they might mistake it as this kid's just ADHD, or this kid's got a learning disability, or the word dyslexia gets thrown around a lot, so some people just call everything dyslexia because they don't know what else to call it.
Or autism.
When their kids are having problems.
Right.
So that's why it's important for them to actually see someone and get a real diagnosis, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And we need the family history for that to be able to... I do not know a child that's on the FASD spectrum who has not been first diagnosed with ADHD.
Oh, okay, so that's good to know.
And so ADHD is a symptom of this. And we know that it's a symptom because in a child who has a chemical imbalance with ADHD, if we give them stimulants, we see immediate improvement. But it really doesn't address the issue.
Okay.
We see with our kiddos, teachers would notice impulsivity, and so they see to the end of their nose. You can practice. We're going to go into the music. We're going to go into the hallway, walk down the hallway, keep your hands at your side. You're going to be very clear with your expectation. They're going to walk into the hallway, squirrel, and it doesn't matter how much prep work you've done.
Right.
They're distracted. That impulsivity is going to be there.
So that brings me to, what can classroom teachers, if they understand these things and if they've been given the information, what are some things they can do to be proactive? Because that could frustrate any teacher if I just told you this and you did it anyway, or that can be really frustrating, especially when you're trying to manage a classroom, or you're trying to teach a lesson, or you're trying, whatever. So what are some proactive things teachers can do to help kids that might have these fetal alcohol syndrome disorders?
I think the most effective tool for teachers is to first understand it's a capacity issue. It's the student can't do it versus they won't.
Okay.
Because that's going to set a teacher up psychologically to be frustrated. I'm asking you to do this, you won't do this. And versus understanding that at that moment in time, that child can't do that. So we need to approach from the standpoint of it's a can't versus a won't. We need to make that connection with that child in that child's strength. So if we have a child who is very musical or can chant or can sing, then we're going to be able to let them sing their multiplication tables versus sit there and write it out.
So the more you can engage them,
and more that we can engage,
it's going to keep those other behaviors from occurring.
Yes. And if they can get Jenny to put somebody in the classroom to offer supervision, it will be very, very helpful because they need somebody to be close to them to help them stay on track and stay directed toward those behaviors that you want to see that's going on.
Yeah, so a lot of coaching type, more coaching model. And so how do you address behavior then if it's truly a can't do? Like what are the ways we can teach behavior to them that is going to work for them? Or is that something we just continue to work with and struggle? Because I mean, truly, I'm asking, because I'm guessing there's a lot of teachers out there going, what do you mean? Is it that they just will never? Or is it that it's just going to take a long time of teaching?
Well, we know that through repetition that we can make new pathways.
Right.
But it is repetition, and it is finding their ability to learn best. So when we get kiddos who are auditory learners, we're going to teach in an auditory way. When we get to students who are visual, the hands-on, most of our kiddos are going to be hands-on. They're not going to be auditory learners.
Right.
So being able to teach them in the way that they learn best, and then working with them for setting reasonable expectations for their goals.
Okay.
And be able to reframe success both for them and for their student. So when we're talking to them for behavior plans, and the teachers have behavior plans in the classroom where they're moving the clothespin up and down on a daily basis. These kids may need that clothespin assessment done every hour,
right,
or every morning, or every afternoon.
Sure.
To be able to help them stay
right. So visuals would be really
visuals
are very appropriate. Okay. So you mentioned that they really struggle with things that they have to move from short to long-term memory, which is almost everything in academics, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It is. So what are the things that you feel like, you mentioned music, are there other things that you feel like we should steer our kids towards to help them feel success? I don't know what experiences you've had with other kids that, like, I know, like I said, I know just personally your son has a musical affinity.
Right.
So he's amazing and he has no fear. I don't even know how. Right. But like, how do you help them find those strengths so they can feel success?
I think that you will know instinctively with the son that she's talking about. We were able, with his multiplication table, to look online and find songs. So he learned to sing his multiplication table and do it that way. He would write music to things that he needed to learn. We found with other students, if they dance, them being able to dance when they're doing the movement we found chanting, clapping, anything that will engage. If you can engage 2 or more senses at the same time, the likelihood that they're going to remember what you want them to remember increases astronomically.
Absolutely.
So for parents and homework, that means chewing on something, can be chewing on something like a lemon head, a cinnamon disc, something that stimulates, something that's crunchy while they're trying to do things, or like we've had that been suggested before, the sandpaper letters,
yeah,
the sugar things, the shaving cream, things like that, where they can write their spelling words.
Absolutely.
Are helpful.
And multisensory things seem to be very helpful for a lot of kids with disabilities, as well as all kids. I mean, I always say whatever's good for special kids is good for all kids. So
this is true.
This is what I always tell everybody.
I think teachers will recognize if they see a child who's doodling or drawing or something, they may be able to draw their answers into what's going on. Building. One of my kiddos is an exceptional builder, puzzle put together. That would be something that helping him be able to put his spelling words on a piece of paper and then cut it into a puzzle and then put it back together. Or just kind of simple things.
Those are great ideas. I love that. Okay, so we've kind of already covered that one as we were going. So talk to me about resources that, where do parents, how can they find you if they want more information? I know you have some great handouts. I'll let you kind of hold those up so you can see that she's got a handout that's really cool. It's available for schools. So she could show that if you want to.
You can really
hold
see
it up close, and then,
but,
like I said, I'll snap a picture of it and post it. And if you want some of that, I'll put a link.
These are called adaptive interventions, and we put this together for parents as well as educators. Gives ideas on tips for handling meltdowns, impulsivity, difficulty in transitioning, poor social skills, some hyperactivity things, math, reading and comprehension suggestions that you can work with.
That's great.
That I'll give those with Jenny.
And then she also, here, I'll hold it and you can talk about it.
This is a DVD that was, in our own words, these are individuals who have had prenatal alcohol exposure talking about what it feels like to them to be inside their skin and what they're looking for. In terms of reaching me, we have a website, and it's www.indiananofas.org. And we have lots of resources on our website. The national organization, NOFAS.org, has resources for teachers and parents and families on their website. ProofAlliance.org is another fabulous resource. that you can download things for free that are on there. And I've given Jenny some resources that she can get out to you.
I'll be pushing out some other resources. She gave me a list, and I'll push those out a few at a time over this next week for people that are interested in those. I just really appreciate your time spending this with us today. I learned a lot. And like I said, I already love your family, so Now I'm sure you've touched a lot of people out there that have been watching today, and many more will watch us on replay. So make sure you put a hashtag replay in there for us today if you've watched. And if you have any other questions for Susan, put those in the comments and tag her, and that way she can come on here and answer those for you. And I'll be happy to answer questions too if you have those later, or get those questions to Susan to get the right answers. All right, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today on The Tall and the Short of It. We will be back next week. Betsy will be here, and we were supposed to interview Indiana Dyslexia Association, and they were not able to because they're going to be out of town at a conference. So instead, you're just getting me and Betsy next week, but we're going to talk about a ton of other advocacy organizations that are available for parents and for teachers if you need more information, because we just don't have enough weeks in July. I'm just telling you, to list all the organizations. You got to be special. So
thank you.
So we will be on next week talking more about those and telling you about how our fun August school is right around the corner. So we're probably going to do a back to school month with some information for you teachers and parents as kids are going back to school. So we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.